Do we actually need a Scrum Master or even an Agile Coach to make our company become more agile? They don't seem to be valuable to the company, considering of what they do is not really tangible to the company. Some of them even only ask coaching questions, and some of them are quite costly. Folks, if you also have similar questions and wondering whether a Scrum Master or an Agile Coach is needed to make your company become more agile, stick around because we will elaborate it right after this one on today's episode. So make sure you don't go anywhere because I will be back right after this one.
What's happening, awesome Scrum Masters? Are you ready for another food for thought to improve your Scrum Mastery? The journey towards becoming a Scrum Master is challenging but rewarding. Today's podcast is brought to you by a Scrum.org professional Scrum trainer and a coactive coach with over 15 years experience inspiring and enabling aspiring Scrum Masters like you. So buckle up and get ready. From Brisbane, Australia, here's your host, Joshua Partogi.
Yo, what's good this week, awesome Scrum Masters? I hope you're well and keeping safe. As for me, I've been busy with getting my other YouTube channel, the Scrum Master in Black, to 10,000 subscribers. I have reached that new milestone and I have just done a live stream a few hours ago. And thanks to all of you, the Scrum Master in Black channel have reached 10,000 subscribers. It has reached a new milestone. As you may have noticed, today's episode lives in its own channel on YouTube, Think and Act Like a Scrum Master. So I have extracted all of the podcasts from Scrum Master in Black channel and move it to its own home now. So if you're a Scrum Master and you like listening to podcasts, make sure you also subscribe and bookmark this channel. And this podcast also available as an audio-only podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. You can also subscribe to this podcast on those platforms too. We are now on episode 17 for the Think and Act Like a Scrum Master podcast. And in today's podcast episode, as I have mentioned earlier, we will elaborate whether your company actually needs a Scrum Master and an Agile Coach to make the company become more agile. In the past 6 months, I've been meeting with several executives from well-known multinational companies. They asked me whether their company actually need a Scrum Master or an Agile Coach to make their company become more agile. So whenever I mention agile throughout today's episode, it's the lowercase a agile, the adjective agile, not the uppercase a agile, the noun agile. A lot of senior executives, senior leaders, C-level people, they do understand the need for their company to be more agile, that is, to be more adaptive, responsive, and competitive to the ever-changing market condition. But they're wondering whether their company actually need additional roles like Scrum Master or Agile Coach to help them become more agile. So in other contexts, I've also met some senior leaders who are wondering what do their Scrum Masters or Agile Coach are even doing in the company. They don't see any value or benefit from hiring or having a full-time Scrum Master or Agile Coaches in the company, because when they look at what these Scrum Masters and Agile Coaches are doing, it's not really tangible compared to what, let's say, product owners are doing, compared to what the developers are doing, or the user experience, etc. So they're not seeing value or benefit come out of their Scrum Masters or even Agile Coaches. Now, I have a TLDR, or too long don't read version answer to this question. I would say that no, you do not need a Scrum Master or even an Agile Coach to make your company become more agile. Yes, I do acknowledge that this answer is controversial. Some people might even be defensive when they hear me say this. Even though the company do not need a Scrum Master or an Agile Coach to be more agile or adaptive, responsive, and competitive to the ever-changing market condition, but they need to change. Change is needed to become more agile. Now, you may not necessarily need a Scrum Master or an Agile Coach, but you need to change. Otherwise, you might not be able to adapt and be responsive. So I will elaborate 4 fundamental changes that are needed inside companies so they can become more agile. So the first change that is needed in the company is to shift towards the customer from strategic decisions that are made from the higher level up. A lot of times, initiatives inside the company is the CXO oriented rather than the customer oriented. In some cases, it's shareholders driven rather than customer driven. So we need to shift towards looking at the customers. So we need to bring people who are closest to the customers become even closer. And these people needs to hear feedback from their customers. How is the pain points from the customers using the product or the services the company is currently delivering? So that's a big shift. Now, in the previous model, all of the initiatives comes from the top, from the CXO, from the senior executives. But these people are actually the furthest away from the customers. So how would these people know what the customer wants since they're quite further away? So if we want to be more competitive and adaptive, we need to listen closely to the people who are actually buying our services or products or getting value from our services or products. So bring the people who are closest to the customers even closer and enable them to hear feedback and empower them to do the right thing for the customers. So these people should not need approval to do the right thing, to do what is best for the customers, because the customers will then get value out of the services. And the customer retention might even become higher because the customers are being served well and they might talk positive things about the services or the products that our company delivers to them. Now, interestingly, even though it looks quite simple in theory, a lot of companies are struggling with this. A lot of companies I have worked with, they're very CXO or senior executives driven. All of the ideas are made by the senior executives behind closed doors without even talking to the customers. And it's also challenging because it requires humility from all of the senior executives. They need to be humble to see their idea or their initiative getting rejected by the customers, the people who are paying for the product or services. So that is the first change that is needed in the company. The second change that is needed in the company is pushing down all of the authority down below to the people who are now getting even closer to the customers, the people who are delivering the products and services, the people who gets their hands dirty. They need to be empowered to make decisions, and the company need to maximize bottom-up collective intelligence. Rather than dictating or telling these people what to do, we actually facilitate collective intelligence discussion and collaboration within this group of people. So no longer these people will be told there's only one way that they need to do to deliver products or services to the customers. Let these people figure out what products, services, functionalities, or enhancement that the customer is seeking for. So we're moving away from telling them to facilitate discussion amongst them. So we need to empower these people even more. We need to empower these people to self-manage. They need to have the capability to self-manage and make decisions. Because companies who have people who are self-managed are much more agile than companies where people are still being managed. They make decisions quicker. There is less waiting time to get approval from the top. They make decisions that contribute to the delivery of value to the customers even faster. Empower people to self-manage, facilitate collective intelligence discussion and collaboration amongst the people who are directly in touch with the customers, who are getting their hands dirty to deliver services and products to the customers. So that's the second change. The third change that is needed in the company is to remove silos between departments, divisions, or groups of people in the company. How companies are structured in the past is based on the concepts that was conceptualized by Frederick Taylor in his paper, The Scientific Management. And this concept is all about cost efficiency. And to optimize costs, people from the same functions need to be working in the same group. If you want agility inside your organization, how people are grouped needs to be from the customer value or customer journey perspective. Functional-based organization adds waiting time because there's going to be handover between one function to the next function. Therefore, the delivery of value to the customers is actually lagging. So if we want to speed up the delivery of value, if that is how we view agility, then we need to structure the organization, the departments, the division, or whatever you want to call it, from the customer value delivery or customer journey perspective. So people from multiple functions should work towards optimizing customer value delivery. So one group may consist of people with marketing skills, sales skills, operations skills, and keep in mind to focus on skills rather than functions. One person might have multiple skills, and every group might be working towards certain customer journey or certain customer value delivery. So tear down the silos, restructure the organization, look at it from the customer perspective. Because we're doing this for the customer. Whatever we deliver is for the customer. So organization perspective about structure should shift from cost efficiency to faster value delivery. And we should strive for optimizing value delivery because that's what Agile is all about. So this is the third change that is needed in the company. Now, the fourth change and the last change that is needed in the company is to change the way people work to become more lean thinking and also empirical. So people should not plan multi-years ahead of what they will be doing in the future because it doesn't make sense anymore. The market are changing quite quickly. No longer the market operates like 30 years ago where the market behavior is predictable and linear. Now the market condition is complex. A situation happens, might influence or might trigger another situation. It might affect the global economy. And none of this can be predicted multi-years ahead. So organizations need to start thinking lean and empirical. So make small incremental changes in the company before moving on to the next one. So we can only trust what we can see now, and we should not make assumptions about the far future. We can try to create the future, but we shouldn't make assumptions of what's going to happen in another 2 years, 5 years. That means the way we do planning and budgeting should also be lean and empirical. I've worked with a company who does budgeting for 3 months straight That's quite fat heavy, and it's not empirical. The reason why many companies want to do that is because they want to lock in predictability. If organization does that in today's era, that seems to be a denial mode. In reality, no longer we will have that linear predictability in today's era. So every plan needs to be made empirically based on the latest situation. That's what empiricism is all about. Continuously inspecting and adapting our way based on the latest condition. Our job is to stay competitive, it's to stay relevant with the market condition rather than sticking to the initial plan. If our initial plan that was made 6 months ago is no longer relevant with the current market condition, then we should pivot. We should be humble enough to pivot and throw away the plan that we have made few months ago if the current reality tells us something different. So that is the fourth change. That's the last change that is needed in the company. In fact, up to the executives level, because a lot of time this planning and budgeting are done at the executives level. Now, when you hear me say these 4 changes, customer centricity, value delivery, empowering teams to self-manage, cross-functional teams, lean thinking, empiricism. This is what Scrum is all about. This is the core ingredients of Scrum. Now, if we'll focus on the core ingredients of Scrum and focus on making these 4 changes, Scrum might happen organically in our company. The point is not to do Scrum. The point is to be more agile. But if we shift our perspective and focus on the core ingredients, we might actually get Scrum for free. Now, to make these 4 changes in the company, it requires leadership, but a different kind of leadership, not a top-down, authoritarian, or autocratic style leadership where people are forced to do certain things. The kind of leadership that is needed is leadership that serves the people, to grow people becoming the best version of themselves. So we should move away towards leadership that facilitate discussion over imposing certain solution to people. We should move away towards leadership who teach, mentor, and grow people rather than judging them, imposing, punishing them when things don't work out. If people are not able to reach certain objective that has been set, what are we going to do as leaders? Are we growing them or are we just judging and punishing them? We should move away towards leadership who coach people over telling people there's only one way to do it. We should create an environment where people can self-discover the solution, and we use coaching questions to help them self-discover those solutions. Now, when you just heard me say this is what Scrum Master is all about. Scrum Master, as described by Scrum Guide, is a true leaders who serve. They are leaders first, but they use the authority they have to serve their people, lift up people to become better. Lift up people so people can become the best version of themselves. So it's not about the label. It's about what they do. I have met many people with the Scrum Master label who just become a personal secretary for the team. No leadership at all. So what's the point? We should strive to get the Scrum Masters to become leaders. Now, hear me out. When you have that perspective, you don't actually need to bring in new people to become Scrum Masters in your company. You just need to elevate the current existing leaders in your company to have the capability. As such, they can be like a Scrum Master. Focus on the capability over adding more layers or adding more people. Just work with what you already have inside the company right now. Now, if you see there is a gap inside the leaders, if you found the leaders in the company do not have the capability that are needed to become leaders who serve, then empower them, enable them, give them trainings, give them mentors, give them all they need to become leaders who serve. Focus on capability over the labels. And when you focus on that, you may have many leaders who serve in the company. You can call them as a Scrum Master if you want, but that's not the focus. The focus is on capability and change of behaviors and attitudes. Now, on top of that, you also don't need an Agile coach. Just work with existing leaders in the company because coaching can be learned. So the existing people in the company can become coaches. And there's actually a blurry line between Scrum Master and Agile coaches when you see it that way. Whatever Agile coaches is doing should also be done by the Scrum Masters. We're not focused on the labels, we're focused on the capability. You can call them whatever you want. The labels is not the point. Once we have lots of leaders who serve, who knows how to coach people, we may get agility. So that's the main point. So focus on the core 4 changes in the company. And when you look at it, those core 4 changes is what Scrum is all about. And focus on adding capability to the leaders in the company. And that might include coaching capability. And then you might get Agile for free because you're focused on capability rather than labels. So that is all from me today, folks. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching today's video podcast episode. I do hope you found some nuggets or new insights. And hopefully you can see Agile, agility, leadership, Scrum Master, or even Agile Coach differently after listening to today's podcast episode. So if you're watching today's video podcast episode on YouTube, as I mentioned earlier, this podcast, Think and Act Like a Scrum Master, is also available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts as an audio-only version podcast episodes. Thank you, folks, for listening. Looking forward to hearing good news, awesome news from inside your organization, how your organization strive to work on itself, becoming more agile without focusing on the labels or terms, but by improving capabilities of the people who are currently working in the company. I will see you on my next podcast episode or on videos on my other YouTube channel, Scrum Master in Black. Until then, stay curious, stay awesome. Now, deliver something amazing for your customers. Bye now.